You've probably been there. You see a sleek rack mount power distribution unit on a product page, the pictures promise real-time monitoring, easy install, and you think, perfect, this will finally let me keep my servers from tripping the breaker at 3 a.m. Then you get it home, rack it up, and the LCD is dim, the network port never seems to talk to your monitoring software, and you're left staring at a wall of blinking lights with no clue what's really happening. It's a frustrating pattern that turns a simple power management upgrade into a wasted budget line item. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That's why I spent a few days digging into the Vertiv Geist monitored rack PDU before hitting record. I read through the official spec sheet, skimmed a handful of forum threads about data center PDUs, and tried to picture how this unit would sit in a typical 42U rack that houses a mix of servers, storage, and network gear. The goal here is to help you decide whether this particular PDU actually solves the everyday headaches you've probably already faced, or if it's another piece of hardware that looks good on paper but ends up collecting dust. First off, the Geist is a 0U design, meaning it doesn't take up any rack units of vertical space. It slides into the front of the rack and mounts to the chassis, which is a nice win if you're fighting for every inch in a dense environment. The unit supplies up to 8.6 kilowatts at 30 amps, split between a blend of C13 and C19 outlets, 36 in total, so you can feed both standard IT equipment and higher draw appliances without needing separate PDUs. For a mid-size data center or a growing colocation rack, that amount of power is often enough to cover a handful of 1U servers, a couple of switches, and a small storage array. What really sets the Geist apart is the next-generation Interchangeable Monitoring Device, IMD. Instead of a built-in Ethernet port that you have to configure straight out of the box, Vertiv gives you a separate module that slides into the front panel. The module houses the LCD and the networking hardware, and you can swap it for a newer version later without pulling the whole PDU out of the rack. In practice, that means you can start with a basic local-only display, then upgrade to a network-enabled module when you're ready to pull data into a DCIM platform. The high-contrast LCD is bright enough to read from across the rack aisle, and it shows voltage, current, and power consumption per outlet group, a practical view when you're trying to spot a rogue blade that suddenly spikes its draw. From a safety standpoint, the Geist carries UL listing and TAA compliance, which is a relief for anyone buying for a government contract or a regulated environment. The Safeguards data claim isn't just marketing fluff. The IMD includes a secure authentication layer that prevents unauthorized devices from sniffing your power telemetry. If you've ever worried about a rogue device pulling network credentials from a simple SNMP community string, this added security is a genuine benefit. Now, let's talk about the downsides that only become clear once you start wiring a real rack. Because the unit is 0U, you need to make sure there's enough clearance in front of the chassis for the module and the cable management. In a tightly packed rack where the front is already occupied by a blanking panel and a few cables, you might end up having to rearrange the layout just to give the PDU breathing room. Also, the 30 amp rating, while solid for many deployments, can become a ceiling if you're planning to push high-density servers that each draw close to 8 amps. In that scenario, you'd need 2 PDUs or a higher capacity model, which adds cost and complexity. Another practical wrinkle is the initial network setup. The interchangeable module uses DHCP by default, which can be fine in a lab but often trips up in an environment with strict static IP policies. You'll need to assign a static address, open the right VLAN, and make sure your monitoring software can talk to the device's specific protocol. It's not a huge hurdle, but it's an extra step that a small IT team might overlook, leading to that same nothing shows up in my dashboard frustration I mentioned at the start. So, who should actually consider buying the Vertiv Geist monitored rack PDU? If you're an IT manager or data center operator who already has a monitoring stack and you need a PDU that can feed real-time power data into it, this unit is a solid match. The interchangeable monitoring module means you won.